purpose, and I'm extra thrilled to be leading this conversation today. I'm Julia Hartz. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Eventbrite, and for over 20 years, our mission has been to bring the world together through live experiences. And I'm really proud that over 90 million people every month come to Eventbrite to find their niche communities, their purpose, their people, and get to, make indelible memories. And that's my life's work. My day job, however, is just like you all, which is being an executive, trying to run a mission-driven company while also scaling and dealing with all of the variables that are around us, which is why I am utterly thrilled to be leading this conversation around purpose-driven leadership with Mr. Jay Shetty. Jay is a global best-selling author. He is an award-winning podcast host of On Purpose. He's the chief purpose officer of one of my favorite apps, Calm, and he's also a co-founder of Junie Tea and a former monk. And he's bringing to us today clarity, purpose, and actionable insights that we can use to be impact driving in our work. And so please join me in welcoming Jay. Hi, Jay.
Hey, Julia, thank you so much. I'm so grateful and honored to be here, and I'm so thankful to Inc. 5000 and yourself for wanting to host a panel on purpose-driven leadership. I think it's so needed in this time. It's so needed for each and every one of us. And I know wherever you are in your journey, I feel purpose is the only thing that keeps you going. So I'm so happy to be having this conversation with you, Julia. And fun fact, before I started my online work in my offline world, I used to use Eventbrite to promote my events in London, where I was born and raised. And when I would organize these events, I'd get really excited because I'd upload the flyer and hope that people were going to subscribe. And then the first 2 events I did, no one showed up. So I couldn't quite figure it out. But I'm a huge fan of Eventbrite and huge fan of yours. So thank you so much.
Well, I feel in just the last 90 minutes that you are one of the most well-known people, because everybody's been coming up to you with a specific story about how your storytelling and your message has touched their lives. But for maybe the odd person in this room who doesn't exactly know your backstory, could you take us through your journey, how you came to this work?
Yeah, so the short version is I was born and raised in London, grew up in an Indian immigrant family. Both my parents worked exceptionally hard. And I felt growing up I had 3 options: to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure. And that's, if you come from an Indian family, that's very true. And all my cousins are now doctors and pharmacists, and I chose the 3rd option, to be a failure. And I was studying management science at business school. And I thought I'd go into the world of work, either into consulting or investment banking. And my life took a really interesting turn when I heard a monk speak. And I'd met monks before or seen them around, but I'd never really understood what their message was or what they were proposing. And this monk that I heard speak, he went to IIT, which is the MIT of India. He'd given up jobs at lucrative offers and turned it all down to wear robes and do service work. And I thought, he's either the smartest human in the world or absolutely crazy. And I was curious enough to find out. And he talked to me about how there were 2 amazing things that we should dedicate our lives to as humans. The first is mastering our emotions and our mind. And the second was to use our gifts in the service of others. So after graduating, I didn't go to my graduation ceremony and went and lived as a monk for 3 years across India and Europe. I thought I'd do it for the rest of my life, but 3 years in, I realized how hard it was. And so not only did I fail at becoming a doctor or a lawyer, I failed at being a monk. And so now my parents were really depressed and disappointed because I was 26 years old, moving back into my childhood bedroom with $25,000 worth of debt and not knowing what I was going to do next. And what did I do? To everyone's excitement, I became a consultant. Went to Accenture for 2 years. Thank God they gave me a job. I was rejected by 40 companies before that because, surprise, surprise, no one wants to hire a former monk. Your transferable skills of being silent and sitting still, no one needs that. Accenture somehow found that to be relevant and said, sure, come along. Very grateful to Accenture. Thank you so much. Shout out to Accenture. And I spent 2 years there doing a bunch of stuff. I was running digital strategy, social media. But you know when you go to those networking events and everyone asks, what's your fun fact about yourself? Mine was that I used to be a monk. And that I teach meditation. So I ended up traveling the whole company teaching both social media and meditation. And so my day job that I got paid for was social media, and my lunchtime job was teaching meditation for free. And it gave me so much confidence and conviction that the world needed the messages I'd learned in my 3 years of practice. And so 2 years later, I decided to start sharing those online. And thankfully it will be 10 years in January since I began the journey. And now we do 500 million views a month across our platforms. We've done over 20 billion views, and the vision has been to make wisdom go viral and make the world happier, healthier, and more healed through entertainment and education.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're gonna drop the mic. In the content that you create and the conversations you have, you're speaking with some of the world's most inspiring business leaders and just leaders in general. And I'm curious, when you think about the through line to what you've learned in the collection of these conversations, how do leaders, really face obstacles and challenges through purpose-driven leadership? What are some of the themes that you've seen or collected in these conversations?
Yeah, I've been so fortunate. I remember I used to make personalized invitations to get guests on the show, and it was so hard to book anyone. And so looking back on 6 years now since On Purpose has existed, I've been so thankful to talk to incredible people who've all given me the opportunity. I've noticed that there's 3 types of leaders. There's purpose-driven leaders who focus on impact. There's performance-driven leaders who focus on goals. And then there's power-driven leaders who focus on themselves. And I think we're living at a time now where we can clearly see all 3 of them, whether you're looking at business or across the world. And what's fascinating to me about the people that I've interviewed that I consider to be purpose-driven leaders is when they failed, the purpose-driven leader never changed their purpose, they just found a new way. If a performance-driven leader found that their version wasn't working or they were failing, they sometimes even changed their goal. They just built an entirely different company. And the power-driven leader didn't care what worked, they just wanted power, and so they just kept chasing that. And so when I think about the purpose-driven leaders, I think about people like Lewis Hamilton, F1 driver, who I've had the fortune of interviewing and becoming good friends with. He started Mission 44, and the entire goal of Mission 44 was to help underrepresented communities enter the world of F1. He lived in a world where he was the only black F1 driver, the only person who was able to rise through the ranks and actually make it, and of course, is the most decorated F1 driver in history. But he wanted to create that opportunity for more people, both holding the steering wheel and behind the scenes. And that's his mission. So what's really interesting about purpose-driven leaders, and I'm sure so many of you are that in this room, they're trying to give people what they didn't have. And I think that's at the core of it. They're trying to create for other people what they wish they had for themselves. Another person, young person, Selena Gomez, who founded Rare Beauty. She started Rare Beauty because she saw through her own experience this intersection of women being confused about how they should look, what makeup they should wear, how they should feel about themselves, and mental health. And because she'd gone through that experience, she wanted to create a community and a business that allowed people to have that conversation, to feel better in their own skin and know what products to use. And so she started Rare Beauty and their Rare Fund, which was focused on raising at least $100 million for mental health. So you can see that these purpose-driven leaders are building from a place of what they didn't have, whereas a power-driven leader isn't trying to build what they didn't have. They're just trying to build anything that gives them more control and power. So the people that I've interviewed have focused on contribution as their overall goal, even if metrics and success and profit are the immediate goal. The ultimate goal is contribution, not control.
Wow. You talk, about how purpose-driven leaders are setting the pace and the tone of a culture. And, we as business leaders hear often that, the culture is set from the top down and to be a great role model. And day in and day out, that feels like a heady ask, despite the honor and privilege it is to be a leader. When you think about transformational leaders who are practicing the culture that they want to create and layering in that concept of creating something that they didn't have, are there any sort of mindsets that you would want us to think about when we think about creating sustainable cultures that really matter?
The first thing I want to say is it's really hard and just want to validate just how difficult it is to build culture. And I think the hardest part is you often feel, how many of you feel like the culture just depends on you to show up as your best every day? Raise your hands. How many of you don't feel that way? Raise your hands. And how many of you don't put up your hands no matter what I say? Because there's a lot of those. Thank you for the honesty at the back.
There.
I appreciate it. If you're like me, I constantly feel inadequate. Like I constantly feel unable not to show up as my best, but to have the ability to influence and impact culture on a daily basis. Even if you set the tone, everyone's going through their own thing. You could show up as your best and be present every single day, create space, but someone's going through the loss of a family member. Someone's just broken up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. Someone else has just had a child. Someone else is wanting to grow in their career but doesn't know how. Like, you're dealing with so many different minds, and to unite that to a culture is without a doubt the hardest thing to do. What I found is that when we get it wrong, we think it's all dependent on us. There's an incredible quote that I love from Roy T. Bennett, and he said that the best leaders don't create more followers, they create more leaders. And I think we're living at a world right now where we think the more followers we have, the better leaders we are, and the more followers someone else has, the better leader they are. And actually, in reality, the best leaders are the ones who created more leaders. So your culture is not dependent on you. Your culture is dependent on how many other leaders you create that can also feel a part of that mission. And the leader in that mission doesn't need to be a leader in your organization. It's giving everyone, someone who's just walked through the door, all the way to someone who's been there since the beginning, the permission to demonstrate leadership in different ways. And I think the way it really stays is when you embed it into decision making. So it's not a picture on the wall, it's not a great logo, it's not a vision statement when people walk into the office. It's actually, how do we recruit? What's the question that you're asking in your recruitment that lets you know whether this person fits your culture? If it's not culture first, someone could tick every box on their resume and it's the wrong person. Starts a recruitment. You can't recruit badly and create good culture. I don't think it's actually possible. The second is retention. How do we retain? What's the culture of how we retain? And the third is, what's the culture of how do we reward? Because ultimately what you reward, people will repeat and people will continue to do. And so I think it has to be inbuilt into your systems rather than giving great speeches and motivating everyone. That's all wonderful and fluffy, but it's how people feel based on how you recruit, retain, and reward. And I want to throw to Julia here because I've been getting to know Julia. We had a prep call for this a couple of months back, and then we were talking today. And honestly, what she's built and the way she's created culture inside of Eventbrite was so inspiring to me. And so, Julia, I wanted you to share this experience of, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but becoming the first person in your organization to be pregnant and then going through that journey. Talk to us about what you created to create that culture.
Well, shockingly, at 200 Brightlings, way back in the day, this is 13 years ago, I was the only pregnant person, as far as the eye could see. And we had 50% female, 50% male workforce, and yet, as it were, I was the only one who was having a baby at the company. And I felt a deep sense of responsibility to, you know, be a good role model. And I didn't even know, I was 32, I think you might be 32. So I'm not gonna make a joke about that being young, but I had no idea what I was doing really. And I remember having the baby and really having this immersive moment of understanding how difficult it is to ramp back into office life after having a baby. This is my second baby. The first baby we'd had when we were in like a windowless phone closet starting Eventbrite, and she just sort of slept in the corner. It was just the founder. So second baby was a lot different. And so out of that, I became inspired to create our own program of how we were going to support both parents during parental leave. And the whole notion of it was, seemed kind of strange to be penalizing people for procreating. If you think about it, like we should be doing everything we can to support that and to help them come back stronger and feel super supported. So we put a number of measures in place, but I think one of the things that I was talking to Jay about is we had just moved into a new office and we took 2 rooms and made them into the nicest rooms. They were on the interior, and we created these breastfeeding rooms, and they were the nicest rooms. We spent the most money per square foot on these rooms. They had the nicest chairs, the best technology, a hospital-grade pump, a kit of spare parts because that were completely brand new, because my thought was it's the day that you come to work and forget your pumping kit that in the back of your head you decide that you can't do it all. And I just didn't want that to ever happen. I wanted that decision to be made on a different day, a different rational moment other than feeling that panic. And so that was a very physical manifestation of this value of really honoring where someone was in their life. And that led to other things. But
and that's what you were rewarding. You were rewarding people who were building families and saying that's our priority as a culture. And therefore that creates a feeling of prioritization that you couldn't get from just telling someone, oh, I'm really happy you're having a baby, like, congratulations. And I think that's how culture's built, is what are you showing you prioritize by what you reward, financially, energetically, and time-wise.
And now we have Brightling baby reunions that are so fun. When one of the concepts of, that you talk about is like stillness. And I know that's obviously rooted in some of your earlier work and your practices and your study, but I also found it to be so relevant to today, when every day we wake up and things are moving faster. And I don't think we're imagining it. I think that the ways that we work are moving faster than ever. I think there's accelerated momentum in the world. I think that what we want and how we want to be communicated to and how we want to connect with people is changing. And I'm curious, with mission-driven leadership, how you see the best leaders moving through moments of transformation when it can seem like there's just chaos and noise around, and any sort of habits or tricks that you have for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not wrong. I mean, if you look at the research shows that we consume more tragedy in 24 hours today than we did in an entire lifetime 25 years ago. So just let that sit in. Like, the amount our brain is doing, we inhale 72 gigabytes of data every single day. Remember when your phone used to be 1 gigabyte, and then, like, that felt like a lot of memory. You're inhaling 72 gigabytes. That's the same, one research study I saw said, that's the same as reading The Hobbit every single day. It's like 100,000 words, right? It's like watching 25 episodes of Stranger Things every single day. So, and some of you are probably doing that anyway, so make it 50, right? But it's that idea of like, so you're not wrong, and that's me talking about entertainment, but that applies to business and news and the markets and whatever else you're analyzing. So we are just overwhelmed and overexposed to more information. What happens is the brain can't deal with it, and that's why we prefer simple language like, they're good, I'm bad, we're threatened, right? Like that feeling of like everything becomes black and white. It becomes simple because the brain goes, too much complexity. So that person who's struggling at work, they're just bad. That person who's doing well, they're the best. And I'm kind of in between, so I suck. And then we make all these really big assumptions based on very little amounts of information. So what do we do with that? There's this, I want to share this story because it's important for founders. There's this great story that Mark Zuckerberg told when Prime Minister Modi of India visited Facebook a few years back. And Mark Zuckerberg said that at one point in his journey of Facebook in 2009, early days, 5 years in, he was really confused about the direction of Facebook. And so he went up to his mentor to ask what he should do. Now, his mentor happened to be Steve Jobs, pretty cool, and amazing to have. And you can imagine in 2009, Steve Jobs could pretty much pick up the phone or do anything he wanted to anyone on the planet. And so Mark Zuckerberg says to him, what should I do? I'm confused about the direction of Facebook. Steve Jobs could have called the VCs, he could have called the president, he could have called anyone and given advice and connected Mark. He said to Mark, I want you to go and live and visit this monastery in India, and I want you to spend time with the monks. And when you do that, you'll figure out the direction of Facebook. Wow. It's bizarre, like it sounds like the craziest advice. And Mark said he actually took the advice. He went out, he spent time in that monastery, and that's where he created the first mission of Facebook, which was connecting people. So what I love about that story is that we think that you're gonna find the answer in the echo chamber. We think that we're gonna find the answer by being surrounded by people who are like us, think like us, and maybe are 3 steps ahead. And Steve Jobs, one of the most iconic, greatest founders of all time, was saying, well, no, I think you're gonna find it in the complete opposite. And I think that's what the greatest leaders are able to do. They're able to connect dots where other people see anomalies. They're able to find connections where other people couldn't see them at all. It's why when most of you shared your business idea with someone for the first time, people laughed at you, thought it was a terrible idea, or said it would never work, because you were connecting a dot that no one else saw. And so that need for stillness, what does that look like when you're running a business, you're managing 200 people or 2,000 people? What does that look like? There is such a need for meditation to be simplified. The way I like to think about it is a meeting with yourself. And it has to be in your calendar. 5 minutes at the start of the day and 5 minutes at the end of the day. It's just for yourself, not a book. You can use an app if you like. You don't have to, not with another person. And you actually check in with yourself. Because guess what? You check in with your colleagues, your partner, everyone under the sun, but you never check in with yourself. And to check in with yourself and that inner knowing that you have is going to get you much further than any thinking you can do. How many of you have sometimes thought through a problem so much that you're like, my thinking is not working, right? It's like thinking won't actually get you to your greatest gift. Knowing will. There's an inner knowing that you have, and it only rises in silence. So if you can find 5 minutes at the beginning of the day, 5 minutes at the end of the day to check in with yourself and ask yourself, what do I know is the issue, right? It's funny how we avoid the biggest issue and focus on what color the website should be. And it's because we know we can figure that out. So we'll think of every color under the sun, but we're not asking the biggest question, which is, I haven't hired the #1 person I need. And we're putting that off. When you check in with yourself, your knowing will guide you towards what's actually frustrating you, not what the little gimmick is that you think is frustrating you.
Wow. Those practical tips are so helpful. And if you're not already a Jay Shetty on purpose listener, I hope you'll be saving it for your trip back home. Before we wrap up, this has been such an honor and a privilege and a gift, really. And before we wrap up, I wanted to say that I heard you have really exciting news to share about your company, Junie, and I wanted to give you a moment to share that.
You're the best. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so excited to do this at Inc. 5000. A few years ago, my wife and I wanted to create something that was really so that I was no longer addicted to sugar. I think that was the point. My wife was concerned about my health. I loved having a sugary soda and a chocolate bar nearly every single day since I was at college to fuel my energy. And my wife, being a nutritionist and an Ayurvedic health counselor, was watching my levels and not so happy with it. And we wanted to create a brand and a product that people could trust so that they didn't have to look at the back of the package, that they could pick up and feel was truly good for them. And we founded our first product, which is our adaptogenic drink, which is our sparkling tea. It's full of ashwagandha, reishi mushroom, lion's mane, all the nootropics and adaptogens that help you balance your life, de-stress yourself. And our company is called Junie, which stands for Just You and I. And so it's just me and my wife, just you and your friend, you and your child
really
who want to connect. And it can be non-romantic too.
Okay.
And our big announcement is that we just found out that we're going nationwide with Whole Foods. We couldn't be more excited.
That's awesome.
To be partnering with them. And it's a dream come true because my wife and I used to, when we first moved to the States, we'd be in New York, we would walk from our apartment to Whole Foods, carry our bags back in the cold, in the winter. And we loved Whole Foods because of its wholesome choices of, what was good for people, better for you, and putting that at the forefront of the market. And that's what we're aiming to do with Junie. So really excited.
That's a huge milestone. Congratulations.
Thank you so
to
much.
You and your wife. I started Eventbrite with my husband, so we have that in common too. Everybody, please give it up for Jay Shetty.
And for Julia Hartz, everyone, please. Thank you, Julia.